Hello, I'm Doug, and welcome to the Krewe of Japan podcast, a weekly podcast where we take you on audio journeys through Japanese culture.
This time on Krewe of Japan podcast.
Welcome back to our podcast. Holy crap, we did it. We made it to the Season 5 recap. This season was a long one, and of course we apologize for how things may have gotten a little stretched out over the course of the season, especially towards the end. You know how life creeps up on you like that. And to all you new listeners out there, first of all, welcome. I know we picked up some along the way, especially after we went on Blue Sky, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode. But just know that things don't stretch out. We don't usually have a month in between episodes. Anyway, now that the apology for stretching out the season longer than it had to is well out of the way, today, the crew regroups to reflect on Season 5 as a whole and everything that went into it. Plenty of returning faces in the season. Well, I guess technically voices. And we had a lot more new ones too. In fact, we have one very special voice returning for this episode, but no spoilers right here. You're gonna have to wait a few minutes to find out. It was so much fun to go through this season with all of you and explore all these new topics and areas related to Japan and Japanese culture. And we hope that you enjoy this last audio journey of Season 5 as we discuss all the milestones, the top moments, the challenges, and anecdotes that went on with the crew this season, in addition to a look ahead to Season 6 and some listener feedback. So whether or not you're an avid listener or maybe new to the crew, this should be a fun, behind-the-scenes look at what goes on with Krewe of Japan and how things happen on this podcast, and get to know us a little bit more. And hey, if you are new to the crew and you're working your way backwards and catching up on our podcast, this will give you a taste of, what's to come. Or really, I guess, already came. For one more time in Season 5, let's go. Here's what's going on with Japan Society New Orleans. Be sure to check the show notes for links and more information. Here we go. Krewe of Japan will be hosting a live pod at Fan Expo New Orleans on Sunday, January 12th at 11 a.m. Come out and see the crew in person and be part of our first podcast live recording ever. Grab your holiday sweater and come out to Nola Brewing and Pizza Company at 6:30 p.m. on December 18th for a family-friendly Japan Society New Orleans holiday happy hour. Whether you're coming out for the food, the fun, or the drinks, we look forward to seeing you there. And also be on the lookout for announcements on other events, including a special screening at the National World War II Museum in February, our Quiet on Book Club online meetup in March, movie nights, and cultural panels. For more information and details about these events and future events, follow us on the website and social media. Everything will be linked out in the show notes. Hope to see you there. Hey, are you new to the crew? Yokoso. We hope you enjoy this episode. If you like what you hear today, then you'll really love our back catalog of episodes from earlier this season and previous seasons. We've had some incredible guests, like former City Pop idol Yu Hayami talking with us about City Pop, author Matt Alt uncovering the history of Nintendo, the man behind Mondo Mascots, Chris Carlier, exploring all the wacky mascots of Japan, and so much more. After you finish up this episode, hit that subscribe button or follow or whatever it is, and get notified when new episodes come out. Then while you wait for the new episode to drop, play catch up with the crew. But before you do any of that, let's dive into today's episode. All right, folks, we are here with Season 5 recap. I know, it's been a long, arduous road. Jen, we made it. We made it to the final episode of the season.
This feels like the longest season we've ever had.
We started recording interviews for this season at the end of November last year with Ryotaro Sakurai, right? And it's literally November 16th. Now. So it's spanned almost an entire calendar year. But before we get, we're going to save that. We got more conversation about what's gone on behind the scenes and everything. But as I've posted on social media, advertising for this upcoming recording, I said we're going to have a special guest. It's not really a guest, but we have a special returning person to the podcast. So I want to welcome back Nigel. Nigel, welcome back to the podcast.
What's up? I didn't know you posted it, and advertised.
I posted on Blue Sky, which we will mention later on as well. But yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, no, thank you. It's been a minute.
A few.
It has, but don't worry, you have not been forgotten. I always remind listeners that you exist.
No way.
Yeah, especially for episodes that I find that I know you would like. I'm like, oh, Nigel would love to be here.
Right, like the history episodes or
the castle episode.
And then the kanji episode from a couple years ago. There was a few that were like, all right, this goes out to you, Nigel.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And obviously, life gets in the way. Life happens. I think,
Here.
yeah, right. I think
Right.
it might be apocryphal, but I think John Lennon said life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And that's essentially what's happened to me. So
You don't have to tell me about that with the unexpected hiatus between episode 18 and 19. Sorry, guys. Sorry, listeners. My bad.
hey, I'm so happy to be here. I think you'll all know. Obviously, we were all there in the formation of this podcast,
Yeah.
and product of COVID times. And for me, I was in the middle of law school at that time, and truthfully, this gave me so much purpose in life. And I honestly feel like it was like my primary job as opposed to like school. So it was
The hours are there.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it was just so good for I think me, just like in all aspects of life. But when I graduated, ended up getting a job, took up all of my time. I had to move, and there's so many different components that went into, again, life happening while you're busy making other plans, that the ability for me to contribute and be a part of the team really went away. And so I'm so glad to finally be in a spot where I can contribute and come back and join y'all on these weekly, maybe not always weekly,
At this point, monthly. I mean, but yeah, hopefully back to weekly soon.
Yeah,
after our break, and for season 6, is aiming for weekly.
Absolutely, and no, I'm also happy to help behind the scenes. Happy to get back involved with y'all because I've missed you guys, all of y'all, and it's good to see y'all. I know listeners can't see the podcast, but when we do record these, we can see each other, even though we are not in the same location. So
Yeah, it just makes things easier when we record, when we have our cameras on, because then we can be like, oh, something's happening in the background for Jennifer. Let's just like let her deal with it and we'll stall.
Oh, Nigel just got stung by a bee. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. True story before we start rolling. Yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, no, good to be back. Like I said, I think this podcast really gave me so much meaning in life. And I think what was so important to me, and I think for anyone who, creates something, and I think probably a lot of maybe artists, not saying that I'm an artist, can probably relate to, is whenever you take something from a seed, an idea, and you grow it all the way to a plant or, a tree, you essentially what I'm saying is you create something from nothing and you put that out into the world. There's just some sort of exhilarating feeling, that you get from doing that. And I really, really miss that in life. And I think also the kind of weird side effect of a podcast is you end up talking to all these different people that you never thought you'd be able to talk to and come across and meet.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
I know y'all have actually done a phenomenal job of keeping that up and getting just incredible guests on the show, that when I go back and look at the seasons from 3 to now to 5, I'm like, how did y'all pull that off? How did you get that person? How did you get that person? It's incredible. So just hats off to y'all.
Doug's stubbornness. That's how.
It's
Stubborn
incredible.
or persistent? What is the correct word here?
Nope, stubbornness. I give it
Stubborn,
stubbornness. It's like, oh, they didn't answer my email. Maybe I'll reach out to them on social media. Oh, they didn't reach out to me on social media. Maybe I'll shoot them another email. Like,
Okay, not all the time. I sound like a stalker.
not all
there.
the time,
No,
but
but I recall even from like season 1, like trying to plan out getting people. I think I'm still subscribed to some people's like Patreons that we subscribe to just so we could get them on the podcast.
True story. I am too. So
Yeah, you're welcome.
some of them paid off, some of them didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
glad to be back. I know I'm taking up all the time, so I know the whole
No, glad
purpose
to have
of
you
this.
back in the
That's
fold,
good.
man.
it's worthy. And wow, deep stuff, Nigel.
You deserve a few minutes to bring
shine.
yourself back into
Yes.
podcast form, right?
Hey, truthfully, I forgot how to do this, so I spent.
Don't worry, Doug and I are rusty
probably-
at it too, since we haven't technically recorded in since
6 months, 5 months,
yeah, maybe
something like that. I don't know. It's been a
So,
long
yeah.
time. Yeah, that's a little bit of behind the scenes. As we were just actually, that's a great segue into our next section that we were going to talk about. Just the podcast as a whole, season 5. we mentioned at the very beginning that this season started pretty much a year ago when we started interviewing as soon as the episode, like as soon as our last season ends, we start
start back.
planning and start reaching out for interviews, which we've already kind of started doing to a certain extent for season 6 already. Yeah, so we've been doing this for about a year now for season 5. It's crazy. But most of the recordings were done in May, with the exception of the history one with Sam and Nate. That was recorded in June because of timing and travels and everything that was going on.
But everything technically was pretty much done by May.
Yeah.
And that's just because stuff happens, guys.
Yeah. Well, we didn't I don't even remember exactly when we kicked off. I know it was right before Easter.
Yeah, I think it was in March, maybe. I think something happened where we couldn't start the season in February, so maybe we started in March. I don't
That's right.
remember.
And then we had that, not an emergency, but like when Akira Toriyama passed away, I was able to kind of work in there. Episode 3 was not planned. That was something like, hey, let's talk to Matt and see if he's interested, and really put together pretty quickly. And unfortunately, you couldn't be there for that one, Jen. Yeah, that was something that was like, all right, if we don't address this now, like it's such a big person that we lost in pop culture that, it feel like we are not doing justice to, what's going on. So we wanted to really kind of find a way to do that. That was something that kind of came in, and it worked out timing wise to be able to do that, because I would have regretted not being able to talk about it, because he had a substantial impact on my interest in Japan growing up as a kid. So that was really, really fortunate that we were able to give him the time. I really wanted to be able to shine a light on him and his life.
Yeah.
Not only that, like just stuff with our lives happen. And so then like it's like, okay, we either go on hiatus for a little bit or skip a week, or, we do our famous episode cheat where we split it into 2 episodes.
Which all right, so we didn't do
We cheated a lot this season.
Oh, it wasn't really 2-parters. I mean, we were able to find, I think that we had a couple interviews that went longer than expected, which is not a problem. We actually love that. But sometimes in terms of finding, it's good to find a good divide, because I think with both episodes, there was a clear divide in terms of the content that was discussed.
Exactly.
Where we cut off.
So technically it wasn't 2-parters because we didn't advertise it like a 2-parter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think one of the ones I'm thinking about, Asby Brown, that episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it actually did a great job of pulling that off, because you wouldn't realize that those are the same interview. It seems like completely 2 different things. So
yeah, and I mean, where we cut it off was there was no in between conversation or anything. It was just a change of topic in the conversation, and it just felt like, all right, sometimes there's just a natural change and you feel it when you listen to it. You're like, okay, the topic changed there. And we were looking at options, and it was a longer episode. I'm like, well, do we really want to release a hour and 20, hour 30-minute episode? Or would it be better to give each topic kind of its own highlight, which I thought ended up being the better route.
Yeah, agreed.
Same thing with the history episode. We spent a lot of time on Yasuke, and we spent a lot of time on William Adams both. And at that point, originally it was supposed to be hey, let's talk about just foreign-born samurai as a whole together, and then kind of compare. But then it ended up being much more of a deep dive into each individual person. So it was split it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I take it, it's been out for a while, and it crushed the Emmys, but I take it you both have watched Shogun?
I have. Yes. Jen, have you?
Looking at you.
No. How dare you?
I have not. And you know what's funny? For my job, when I'm advertising the study abroad program to the students, I'm like, oh yeah, we have this history class called Samurai Tradition. So if you're watching Shogun right now, you should totally take that class. And I haven't even watched it. I don't have time. Listen, people. My time consists of being a mother and going to work. And the few hours I have before I pass out to go to sleep for the night, I either choose to read manga or watch anime, and that is my free time. And I cannot give my free time to anything else, because those 2 things still bring me some joy in life. So you know what? I can't watch Shogun.
You're saying your child doesn't bring you joy? Is that what you're saying?
Listen. She's 2. What do you think?
What Jen is now motioning to cut this part out of the podcast.
No, I'm not. Listen, raising a kid is hard, especially if you're not into children or raising people, or I'm just an independent person, people. That's all I'm saying.
Hey,
I'm an independent person,
know?
and for me, it's a smidge more challenging than a usual person who like maybe loves kids or loves babysitting. I never babysat in my life. Like, you know how that's like a thing for like high school girls to do?
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I was like, I'm not taking any babysitting job. Hell no.
Hey, no, I hear you. Well, how about this? Here's a redemption arc for you here.
Thank you.
Blue-eyed samurai.
Yes.
Jen, I'm throwing you a lifeline.
No.
Kind of anime. Kind of.
Yeah, it's
No.
kind of anime. I think it counts. But
Listen, I need to keep up with all of my anime and manga Instagram people. So if they're not watching
fair.
it, I'm most likely not
Wait.
watching it because I need to keep up the conversations.
Was Blue Eye Samurai this past year? No, it was last year, right?
I don't
I
know.
feel
don't
like
know.
it was.
I watched it this year, but
Yeah.
I know I'm getting us terribly off track. So sorry.
No,
about
it's
that.
okay.
But
No.
Hey, no,
um,
I'm all about talking about anime, as we all know by now.
So if you haven't watched, an audience out there, if you haven't watched Blue Eyed Samurai on Netflix, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Same with Shogun. Jen, watch both at some point during the off season.
But I'm watching the remake of Ranma Half.
It's a remake.
But it's Ranma Half. Where's Maddie? She would defend me.
Is it Ranma half or is it Ranma 1/2?
One half. You're right.
No, I had no idea.
I'm a
That's
fake
what I'm
fan.
asking. I'm
I
like,
don't know.
oh my gosh.
I
Well,
don't know. Guys, I have a sinus infection right now. So just like pretend
gosh.
I know what I'm talking about. Even though my head is a little fuzzy.
Gotcha. Well, how about this? Since obviously this is the first episode that I've been back for a while.
Yeah, and you're already throwing me under the bus, Nigel. How dare you?
Don't worry, Doug will save us in the editing room.
oh,
But
no, I won't.
Don't worry, listeners. We all love each other like a family.
I will leave all this in here.
well, let me ask you this: since I was not here for season 5,
Yeah.
or 4, or 3, but mainly season 5, what were some of the big milestones for the season?
I would say like the biggest one, I mean, when I think of milestones, I think of measurable things, numbers. We eclipsed 33,000 downloads in terms of overall Simplecast downloads, but we also started, a friend of mine tipped me off to YouTube Music, which I use Apple Music and Spotify mostly. So he said, oh, well, they're doing like podcasts on YouTube Music now. You know that, right? And I'm like, oh, are they? I had no idea because they were closing down the Google Podcast app or something like that. So,
Oh, really? I didn't know they closed that.
yeah. And I think YouTube kind of like absorbed or they merged.
Well,
I don't know how.
Google owns YouTube, so that makes sense.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So YouTube, I started pushing it out to YouTube Music, but then I saw something that we could set something up where they can also push a RSS feed release of your episode to actual YouTube, where it will basically create a static image, and that's all that plays, which is unfortunate, but a static image, and then it'll put your audio from your feed directly on there and load all the information all in there and everything too. So that was actually something new that we started up this year. I actually pulled in a lot of views.
Which I'm glad because like I tried my best to do the whole YouTube video thing for our podcast,
It's
but
tough.
it's rough. I hate editing. Like I used to have my own YouTube channel and like that was literally the worst part of the whole thing was the whole editing portion.
That's something that's so interesting because even like most big name YouTubers today, like they don't edit their own videos.
Yeah, they hire people to do it.
Yeah,
I
they
don't
hire
got that money.
No.
Especially
it just-
nowadays when people are like, oh, my time is worth this much. I'm like,
Yeah.
listen, I respect that. My wallet does not have that kind of money.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that a lot of the editing that I do for audio, I don't think I'd be able to do the same editing for video.
Yeah.
I mean, the videos weren't too difficult because I was either doing like a loop static image to where it looked like it was animated and stuff like that, but it just kept on looping with like the 5 seconds I used.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that I had to do it still time consuming and annoying.
Yeah.
So that's why like it was so slow to get out. So I'm so glad that they did this like whole linking between YouTube Music and the videos because like that was a life changer. Means I don't have to edit anymore. Woo!
I get one more graphic I have to create. I have to do the thumbnails for YouTube. So I've had to do
you
the
do.
whole, how do you make a good YouTube thumbnail? What do you need to do?
You know?
And it's not my face ever on there. Like I
Yeah,
never
I
put my
remember
face
those
or your face or
days.
anyone's faces.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, you gotta do the circles and arrows pointing the stuff to
Ugh,
make it super
gross.
clickbaity.
Yeah. I don't know how
Hate
if
that.
what ours are doing out there, if it's really hitting anything in terms of algorithms and stuff. But
Yeah.
it is what it is.
It's there for listeners to listen to if they
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah, between our shorts and our episodes, I think this year, because this year is when we took the big jump on YouTube views, and I think it's like 9,000 over the course of everything. But that's a lot of them are shorts. Like a lot of the shorts are what get a good chunk of our views.
Yeah.
But
Are
we
you
have had a lot of
saying
good,
over?
huh?
Are you
Over
saying
9,000,
over
yes.
9,000? Okay,
Yes,
I
Vegeta.
just couldn't let that opportunity pass.
Or Nappa.
Just to be clear. That, so.
Of course. And I don't know if this is a milestone, but Doug, you have us on a new social media, right?
Which none of us knew about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, so Blue Sky's been around for a minute. If you've listened to our episodes to the very end, you hear us ramble off all of our social media and our teetering between calling it Twitter X, Twix, Twitter X, whatever. We're still on there, but have not been using it as much. But Blue Sky is an up-and-coming app. Back when it was invite only, I created an account for us last year and been on there for a minute, but really over the last week or so has really taken off. Our follower count has quadrupled in just a week. So that's really nice. It's new eyes and new ears on our content and our followers, hopefully. I know we picked up a few already, they're saying, I can't wait to listen to your stuff. So that's really interesting. Looking forward to help building the community there because it really does feel like pre-Elon Twitter, before he procured it. It really feels like that kind of community where everyone feeds off each other and really interactive and fun. It feels different from what Twitter has become. So, and also there's no algorithm driving anything. It's just what you post comes up on your feed. And if you want someone to see it, you have to repost it. It's not like something's going to drive it to the top. So it's really something new, something exciting, and hoping to get some more listeners off of there. If you are listening right now and you found us on Blue Sky, let us know on Blue Sky or send us an email or whatever. We'll list all that out at the end of the episode. But we're
Nice.
Crew of Japan. I just search us if you haven't found us on there yet. Crew of Japan.
Well, speaking of the podcast, since you're spieling the last spiel that we do for the episodes, let's talk about the topic of this episode, just our little recap of season 5.
That's true. It is a recap. So at some point, we actually have to recap the season to some extent. We're not going to. Last year, we kind of took every episode, went one by one, and dropped a snippet in there and all that stuff. And well, in my mind, I thought it was a great plan. It just kind of did feel a little overkill because everyone already listened, theoretically, to the episodes. So it was kind of like an extra step. But so this year, I think we're going to really more highlight some of, obviously we want to give a call out to all of our guests for coming on. We had 18 guests this year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big season. I think last year we had 17. And of those 18, 5 of them are returning. So that was really cool. And we also had a couple guest hosts as well. For our history episodes, we had Sam come back on. And then for our Miyagi episode, we had Will Woods, who actually helped us connect with Ryotaro Sakurai. So that was, Will came on as he's a local member of our Japan Society down here and really kind of helped build that episode and give us the opportunity to make that episode happen. So really appreciative to Will for giving us the hookup.
Yeah, that's super awesome. And I think that goes back to what I was saying. It's so incredible, the people that you can reach when you have a platform like this, and it never ceases to amaze me. Even a couple years ago, the people who would respond to an email of, hey, would you like to be on this podcast?
Yeah.
And I know that for each of those interviews that y'all absolutely crushed it, and it's just amazing to look back and, like I said, see just the catalog of amazing people who are doing amazing things in the Japan landscape that y'all have had to be on here.
Yeah, I think we always talk about it every season, but that's probably the most nerve-wracking part of planning the episodes is okay, we plan this really cool episode idea and we're like, oh, who would be perfect for this? This person. Oh, let's contact them and see if they'll come on. And then we wait and we start getting nervous because we haven't heard from them. We're like, oh crap, are they gonna come on? Will they not? Will we have a backup person? Are we just gonna dump this episode? And all the above, honestly. We've done all the above, I think, already.
Yeah. It really, there's some that we definitely had a table because we didn't know if the interview was actually going to happen, or it got delayed multiple times, or it was just oh God, is this going to work out? I hope it does. But real quick shout out. I'm going to give a quick shout out to all of our guests. William Tsutsui, who did our Godzilla episode. William McMichael, a friend of mine from Jet, who helped come on to do our Hope Tourism episode. Matt Alt, returning guest. Everyone knows Matt at this point, our unofficial host of this podcast.
That's so
Walden
awesome.
Perry, who is an active Japan Society member and frequenter of our events. Ryotaro Sakurai, Asby Brown, who is a New Orleans native. We actually met him at Japan Fest last year before he came on. That's actually how the episode kind of got its wheels spinning.
Yep.
Was at Japan Fest. Peter McIntosh, Dr. Tara Sanchez from Chalmette High School coming on. Ty Ebel from the Consulate, and Willie Archambault, our friend on MEX out in Osaka. Patrick St. Michel for Japanese pop music. Dr. Kate Kitagawa from JAXA. Jake Adelstein, the author of Tokyo Vice, executive producer of the show Tokyo Vice, and journalist. Takumi Kato, our taiko drumming friend. That's a world champion, by the way. Rob Dyer, returning guest. That was one of Nidel's big gets from earlier in the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And Nathan Ledbetter for our history episodes. Taryn of Mongolila for our shoujo episode that Jen had been so patient. Eager and patient at the same time, right?
Yes.
And then William DeLong for coming on for the Castles episode. So yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to all those guys and gals for coming out and being a part of the crew this year. But like you said, it just depends on like how those episodes come up. It really does change from episode to episode. There are so many that we've had tabled, like you said, manga, the shoujo episode. How long have we been waiting for that one to come out or do an episode on it?
I think since season 3, me and Maddie wanted to do it. And yeah, we were just like, who the hell do we get for this? And like trying to find someone that we could just have a casual conversation with and not get too like serious about things was the challenge. And I just thought she was the perfect fit.
Yeah.
So I know that happens all the time in behind the scenes of making a podcast. And I guess I'm curious to know this season, what are, let's say for both of you, maybe one or two interesting stories behind getting someone on the podcast, or maybe almost. Who is it?
All right, Jen, go.
So we have been trying to get Jake Adelstein, I think since season 3, right?
I think even before that.
I think maybe before that.
Yeah, I
remember, Doug, you reached out first really, really early in the game.
I think I reached out when Tokyo Vice season 1 came out originally.
Yeah. And then I emailed him like maybe another season passing us.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I passed the baton back to you. And third time's the charm. We finally got him to come on.
I think that the really hard part when you're reaching out to people is you don't really know what email address is the right email address. You may find one on a website or like maybe in their social media, but you don't know if they're going to be checking that all the time. And then sometimes it goes to the spam filters. You never know. Like that's the one thing, we've even had guests that reach out to us and their emails go to our spam filters on Google, which is weird, but it just takes one time for that email to get, caught, or maybe you're catching them at a really busy time when maybe they're getting a lot of emails and then sometimes they have a downtime.
Yeah, exactly. Because like that's what happened with us back in, I don't even know what season it was anymore, but with the YouTuber Norm.
Oh yeah.
For the shamisen episode. That was chaotic because I reached out to him like 1 year and then a year later he like pops back up in our line of vision and he just ended up being super busy. And like I totally understand that because if you watch his YouTube channel, he's like always somewhere else. Like he's always doing something.
Yeah.
So yeah, just that's what happens is either, the miscommunications of like which email or just, people are busy too. So it just happens.
I think the one for me now, obviously Jake was one of my stories I was going to say, like, cause that was one we've been trying for so long and it finally worked out and got to meet him in the summer and super nice guy. Hopefully, look forward to doing something, collaborating with him, possibly with Japan side in New Orleans down the line too. There was some interest in possibly doing that. So maybe awesome. Jake, if you're listening, we're listening too.
Yeah.
No, one that was for me was Dr. Kate Kitagawa for JAXA. So back in season 1, we had Kate on for
The Age of Lady Samurai.
Samurai, right. She was on the Netflix show Age of Samurai, and she came on to do talk about Lady Samurai. And we kept in touch over the course of time. I think we reached out again back in 2021 in the fall or something like that to see about maybe coming back on as a guest for another episode or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But then she mentioned that she was transitioning to working in the outer space, working in that kind of area of science while she was in London. And I was like, okay, yeah, that'd be cool. And then time just happens, right? Like we just have so many other things coming up. It's just never come up. But back in January, they had like the Slim launch. They had a bunch of different like Japan related outer space projects. And I was like, wait a second, we know somebody. So I replied to her original email we went back and forth with, but then I was like, let me try her website and do that again. And then turns out the email address that I had that we had used years back was one that she didn't really check, but she gets the one that comes through from her website still. So because I went to her website after not hearing from her, it ended up working out. And that was interesting though, because then once she agreed to come on, she's like, I'm now like an official, she holds a position at JAXA kind of high up there, like as a assistant to a senior vice counsel. I forget the exact title, a really high level. And you have to go through the proper chain of command when working with the Japanese government or a Japanese government agency. So you had to, during the interview, we actually had someone from JAXA sitting on the call and had to be there as part of it just to monitor, to ensure that everything was good to go.
Don't tell the secrets.
Right. So that was really
when
interesting.
You asked about where the aliens were at.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was a really cool episode. I was really interested in that because I was a big space geek back when I was a kid, and it still interests me to this day. It just happened to be, again, a timing thing, like where we had a guest that we had connection to the Japanese space program already, and there was a lot of things going on. So I thought it was like just serendipitous that everything kind of worked out.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I think, that's funny. Both of you mentioned two people that one I either know or, fun fact, for Tokyo Vice, I read that book right after I read Pure Invention by Matt Alt.
Oh, yeah?
And so this is early days of season 1. I emailed, and I'd have to go back and see if I can find it, but I reached out, tried to get Jake Adelstein on back in season 1. So this went from me to Doug to Jen back to Doug. It's wow. So that is a huge score, I think, that for sure should be celebrated.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm about to blow y'all's mind because like we haven't talked about it, but like I'm gonna call out a favorite episode of mine from season 5.
Okay.
And it's actually the language learning one with Walden Perry.
That was a really fun episode.
I wanna tell you why it's my favorite. And I hope none of our other guests get offended by this, but I actually enjoyed just having a casual conversation with just a regular member of Japan Society of New Orleans. I thought it was so fun. It wasn't as stressful for me because I find like when we have these like big name guests, they're big name to like us or whatever, and like we admire them and we're so happy that they're there, that I get so nervous and I'm anxious. I'm like, don't say anything stupid, like don't do anything stupid. And so like having someone very chill come on and we just have this casual conversation about learning Japanese, it was just it was such a pleasure to record. And so that I think was my favorite for the season.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I totally understand that. And I don't think any of our guests or any of our, people that we've interviewed throughout the seasons would be offended by that. Because I think that's.
If anything, I complimented them. I was so nervous about talking to them that I was like, oh my God, I'm super stressed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Doug, what about you? What was your favorite episode?
Oh, so, there's always that line that you can't really pick a favorite amongst your children.
Yeah.
I like to say that here too. But, oh man.
Why not? I picked one and it wasn't even my child. It was yours.
Okay, well, I've been going back and forth on this because I have some that are favorite for one reason, but then some for another. I really, really, really liked the ASB episodes. I thought those were actually really insightful, really something I didn't really know much about. And ASB, when you talk to him, he's like a local New Orleans guy, and it felt very comfortable talking with him about stuff. Not that it doesn't feel comfortable talking to other people, but we met him in person already. You didn't have the stress or worry about like saying something stupid. So I agree that Walden was really fun. I really actually that episode kind of reinvigorated me in wanting to learn Japanese. Then I got busy with work and editing, and I didn't really have time to study Japanese. But I thought the ASB ones, I had a hard time picking between the two of them. And I said, you know what? Well, it was the same interview, so I'll just cheat and call that.
Yeah, just the Asby Brown interviews.
Yeah. And a close second would be Bill Tsutsui with the Godzilla one.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was one of the ones where we met. He did an event with Japan Society a couple years ago first. And then when we went out to dinner after and I brought him back to the airport hotel, I happened to just say, hey, if you ever want to come on a podcast, I pitched it in the car. I'm like, you're a captive audience. You can't ignore this email.
Shoot your shot, Doug. Shoot your shot.
So no, he was more than willing. And then it ended up being a little bit of time before, but it was also during the time when Godzilla -1 came out. So that was kind of, we ended up getting
timing.
2 episodes out of that one too, really, if you look back, because we released Godzilla -1 spoiler conversation. That was a bonus episode for season 4. But yeah, that was another split right there.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So Nigel, I know you've been listening. You weren't actively in the interviews, but when you were listening to the episodes, like which one did catch your attention?
It's actually really funny because 2 of the episodes, so I picked 3 that really stood out to me as kind of ones that I, just really enjoyed going back and listening to for various different reasons. But 2 of them have already been mentioned. And that is the Asby Brown, particularly the second one. It was the urban landscapes one.
Yeah.
Really, really got a lot out of that episode. There was just so much to kind of just ponder and think about of changing landscapes of Japan. And like he mentioned like a spot that had like not been bombed during World War II. And it was like this very, well-preserved area that had been demolished and a shopping mall had been put up in it, its playthrough. So it's just like, oh my gosh, like so many great moments from that episode. But the second one I was actually going to say was the Godzilla episode.
I knew you were a Godzilla fan, so I knew that was
yeah.
Starting strong with episode 1 of the season, that was
we did
great.
That on purpose.
Yeah, and it worked. I think that it really played to y'all's benefit, and Bill's story was actually really cool as well.
I know, right?
Growing up in Texas and having this interest in Godzilla that first it seemed maybe no one shared, but people got on board. But me, I have to go with my third choice. And these are in no particular order, but the man, the myth, the legend, Matt Alt.
Of course, the Matt Alt simp.
Matt is just, I don't know if I'd say simp now, but Matt is really, it goes back to one of the people who really inspired us to really make this podcast, and to see that he's come along for like every season since the first season is just 1, hilarious to me, but 2, I'm just so grateful. And I hope that Matt knows that, too. But his episode was also just really great. Just diving into Akira Toriyama and his legacy was super cool. Like Doug, you mentioned earlier, super timely as well. But I just, I feel like every time Matt talks, I'm just like, I learned so much. And I'm like, man, super, super jealous that y'all got to hang out in Japan, Doug. That is super, super awesome. But again, one of those things that's like, wow, like this podcast has created those opportunities. And it just, puts a smile on your face, at night.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, tell us what our listeners enjoyed. What were like the top 5 downloads?
Okay. So I'll start with 5 and I'll work my way down. And also there's 2 scores. Okay. So there's a downloaded episode. That's what we consider downloaded through a podcasting app, information given to us by Simplecast. And then we have our downloads plus YouTube. So this is going to be a ranking for 2 separate ones because YouTube's new. And I still don't know if a view counts as much as a download in terms of if we're weighing apples to apples or apples to oranges here, because a view could technically be like less than a second. So hopefully people are watching longer than that. But yeah, so I do know that YouTube attention spans tend to be relatively short. So if you don't catch them in the first like 30 seconds, you're done. But anyway, our number 5 for downloads only was the Akira Toriyama episode. It came in at number 5. And downloads plus YouTube actually was Walden.
Hey.
So that was at number 5.
Nice.
Yeah, so that one, Walden's episode for the self-study was really, really enjoyed on YouTube. Which Walden actually has his own YouTube channel, which you can find on the links for that on his episode, where you can track him and his Japanese studies. And as of this moment, he's actually planning to take the N1 again this December.
Wow, no
he's
way.
shooting for that again. We're cheering for him. Walden, if you're listening, go man. You can do this. Number 4 was our Inside Homes and Architecture episode, number 6, with Asby Brown. And actually, that was number 4 on both our downloads as well as downloads plus YouTube. So yeah, it kind of fell in line. Our number 3 in downloads was Japanese self-study. So it wasn't as high on the YouTube side as it was on just the downloads. The downloads, it was a more popular downloaded episode than it was in general. But our number 3 between the two was actually our Mexed episode with Ty and Willie. And that's probably because I marketed it and I went on the Mexed subreddit and said, hey, can I post this episode here from the, an official source of the Japanese consulate? And they were like, yeah, absolutely, sure. And then I ended up just posting. I mean, I posted all the links, but everyone goes to YouTube. It's the easiest and the quickest. So that one actually probably has our best click-through rate and longest view rate. Like, people watched it to the end. So that one was a pretty high one. Number 2 was Godzilla, was our second top downloaded episode. And then downloads plus YouTube was the space program. That one kind of took off on YouTube more than a lot of the other episodes and shouted up the ranks in terms of totals. And then first place, it was the consensus first place on both. It was the Yakuza episode with Jake Adelstein. It was our most popular episode of the season.
Nice.
Between regular podcasting and YouTube and podcasting.
So it was worth waiting all those years.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, fun fact, our most controversial episode. Do you want to know? Not the Yakuza one. The most controversial one was the geisha episode.
I can imagine, yeah.
Because there were some comments were in the episode that, honestly, I don't think it was super negative. I just think that there's like a conversation about how to best respect people's privacy and things like that. And
yeah, because they were human. Geishas are human.
Yeah. And I think there was some call outs during that. And some groups found that calling them out. And they responded on a comment on YouTube, which I forgot to actually reply to. But if you're listening, and honestly, there is no problem in terms of study. Like, there's a line always with like privacy and sharing information. And if you're doing things from a more academic and like just cultural understanding perspective, then hey, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But then there is definitely people out there that do like the stalkery, shady stuff that Peter was, I think, referring to. But I don't think that necessarily refers to the folks that were in the comments. But that episode got spiked because it probably got shared on their forum, and we had about, I think it was like a 48-hour window where we had like 50 views on that one episode out of nowhere. So I call it our top controversy.
I feel like we need like some sort of audio title card for these things, like most controversial episode, and then highest ranking one, or all this stuff. But so that's an interesting, I guess, category. So most controversial.
It wasn't even, to be honest, I think it may have just been. It wasn't really controversial, but it was more like we got one of our first longer comments on YouTube.
It's a hard topic to talk about because, like, yeah, you could just steer straight into like the art of it. But with what's been going on in Japan and tourism lately, and tourists just not behaving themselves, which is appalling to me still.
Yeah.
And it's still going on to this day. Oh my freaking God. Everyone behave yourselves if you go to Japan. Anyway, it's one of the topics that's really hard to steer away from that because Kyoto made like laws to like help geisha, steer clear of people that are just being inappropriate. So yeah, it's a topic that's hard to not talk about. So but I'm glad we did it because people need to be more aware of themselves and aware of others. And so once again, I'm going to say this to our listeners. Please behave yourselves if you go to Japan. Do not use shrine torii gates as an exercise thing or freaking bother geisha in the street.
Yeah, there were some pretty putrid examples out there over the last few months of tourists not respecting boundaries. I think is the right word here. Boundaries, like knowing where there's a clear, not always clear, but use some common sense.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think from the comments reading how they were referring to what they do on the forum that they're on, I don't think that there's anything wrong if it's done in a more academic and kind of just like studying the arts and studying the history of geisha. I don't think there's any problem with that. I think as long as there's just a clear respect for their privacy, then that's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, speaking of our listeners, do we want to talk about some look aheads and
For sure. I mean, first of all, like, we had listeners make suggestions as always. We have people suggesting. Actually, we're getting more suggestions now coming in than we had in previous seasons, I feel like. And not only that, we've had potential guests reaching out to us directly to come on, which we never really had in previous seasons.
Yeah, that's
Most of the
awesome.
time it's us seeking out guests, and now we've had potential guests come out to us and ask to come on. So that's really a change for us. But we'd love to hear what you guys out there, guys and gals, what you guys want to hear, and interesting topics that you want to talk about, or hear us talk about, or hear other people who are experts in the field talk about, and us listen. But yeah, were there any episodes that come to mind for you, Jennifer, that came out of this season where you feel it came out of a request from one of our listeners?
Sort of. I mean, like I said, the shoujo episode, we kind of dabbled in both anime and manga talks, but like I remember in like season 1 or 2, we had a comment on Twitter saying like, I want more manga episodes or anime episodes. And I forgot which one it was. I think maybe it was manga. And yeah, so ever since that comment, I noticed like we didn't have many. So I was like, we need to do this. Like we've been wanting to do this. And so that comes to mind in particular. And like no one's actually said it, but like having Walden on to do a Japanese episode is nice because in the past they really liked the Japanese learning episodes. So
well, and he was a listener too, I believe, when he reached out to
was.
us. So he was a listener and ended up becoming a guest. So it all ended up working out for everyone. It was one of our top episodes.
Yeah, and at least, I don't know if this trend has held up throughout the seasons, but it always seemed to me that the Japanese language episodes typically, were very in demand, which makes sense. And I think it's awesome. And I even look back at one of the previous seasons, Kamushi-chan, getting her on here. Loretta, I think, was super awesome. That's somebody that I have followed for years, and I died inside a little bit when I saw that. And I
know. I was like, I can't wait for Nigel to do it. Like, I have to go now because now is the time. And
you 100% made the right choice. But that may be someone we circle back to,
Of course, no, definitely. Actually, Doug and I have been talking about who to circle back to, and she's definitely one of them, actually.
She was interested in coming back, so yeah.
Yeah, because she's doing a lot of interesting things with NHK now,
she's doing a lot of travel-based stuff. She's back on the map with the travel stuff. I've been following her on YouTube, so she's getting back.
One question for you, because Doug, you mentioned it, people reaching out to the podcast. Did that happen at all in this season, and did that lead to any guests, or is that in the future, upcoming seasons?
So Walden was one of them. I don't know if it was really like intended to come on fully I can't remember exact context of it, but Walden for sure. Asby said, "Yeah, I'd love to come on. If you ever do an episode, or if you don't, just let me know which topic you want to talk about. I'll come on."
After you cornered him in the parking lot of a airport.
Oh, he was at Japan Fest.
No. That was at Japan Fest.
Okay.
That was Bill. That was William Tsutsui that was in the car, trapped, buckled into the passenger seat of my Camry.
You passed his exit on the interstate and locked the doors. And,
now that we talk about it, Rob Dyer... Remember we had that meeting with Rob Dyer before the season even started?
Yeah.
And he was like, I want to come back on.
Yeah, he's been really eager to work together with us over the seasons, which has been great because he's a great guest and brings so much knowledge about everything. So we love having him on.
I mean, he's always an easy person to tap into. So
yeah.
That's super cool. And Doug, did y'all meet up in Japan as well?
No, he was not there when I was there. So and he usually is in Kansai. He doesn't make it out to Tokyo too much. But yeah.
Okay.
Although I think he's doing a meetup in Tokyo this December.
I believe so, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
I think I saw a post about that. So check it out if you're in the Tokyo area in December. You can meet up with Rob. But yeah, no, I think we had a couple folks that are for future seasons that reached out to us. Actually, more than a couple, probably a handful. Again, we got to really plan everything out because that's the thing. It's like we want to try to keep a diverse idea of what we want to talk about. But, we did have one listener reach back out to us with a suggestion for another season. One of our Instagram followers, Ramen Pharmacist, who recently this past summer spent a long time traveling around the country trying ramen in almost every prefecture, it seemed. I don't know if he traveled the entire country, but every day I was like seeing he was somewhere different and eating something different. And me and him were sharing or messaging back and forth just with pictures and stuff. He asked us if we could do something ramen related. Shocking. The name tracked Ramen Pharmacist. But yeah, no, I think that's something where we can always, I think there's so many prefectures out there where you can tie food and especially have strong ramen ties. Like
for sure. Like already I'm thinking of Kyoto because it has its own ramen street.
Right. There's so many
where
options.
It's just a street full of ramen places.
we could do something noodle adjacent, like soba or udon, which noodle adjacent is a great
technically
term.
we've
I don't
already
need-
done that. Technically, we've already done that in a past season.
Oh, yeah,
we
we
did the
have.
whole noodle episode.
Was it noodles or was it just ramen?
I think it was noodles, right? Or was it just ramen?
It was just ramen. I think that's actually when he started following us, because Shinichi.
Maybe, yeah.
that
Shinichi was
episode
on the
out.
episode, and
So, by the way, if you aren't following him on Instagram, Shinichi Mine is a great follow on Instagram, and so is Ramen Pharmacist. As he posts pictures of ramen every day, it makes me hungry. It sucks that I can't eat it. Not this post suck. His posts are phenomenal, but it sucks that I just can't eat the food in the picture.
Nice clarification there. But I think I'm still stuck on noodle adjacent as a phrase. Which is one I have not heard before. Noodle adjacent.
noodle adjacent.
Yeah, nice.
We also had another listener reach out and ask us, kind of touched on it a little bit, but what interview surprised you the most this season?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
No, Jake Adelstein. I'm still going to say it.
Yeah.
After all these years, and now I found out that, Nigel, you've reached out before even Doug did. Like, this just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Does that push that episode up as being one of the favorites then of the season?
Oh God, no.
Well, I mean, it was definitely one of our top performers, but just I think it was. I mean, Jen, you remember as soon as that email came in with a response from him, I was like, holy crap.
It's happening. It's happening.
And then I did the whole thing of like, do I respond right away? Do I look desperate if I do that? Or do I wait a day and then respond after? And then I waited a day, and then I think he started traveling for something, and then he didn't hear back from him for a couple of weeks. And I was like, oh my God, I waited too long. Oh no. So it was very stressful. I don't want to mess something up. I don't want to mess this opportunity up. I can't screw this up. Oh my God.
Yeah. We just get nervous.
Yeah, no, I think not necessarily from like the shock of getting the interview, but one interview that did surprise me a lot was the interview with Peter McIntosh. I actually didn't know what to expect with the geisha episode, and I really thought it was a very educational and a fun conversation. Peter was great. I didn't know what to expect from him as a personality either, and he was super friendly and really, really fun to listen to.
Yeah, I didn't know either. I literally just knew he was in Kyoto and his expertise was in geisha. And I was like, let's go for it. Because if we don't go for it, we're never going to do this topic ever.
Yeah. How did you end up finding him and getting him on?
I follow a bunch of Kyoto pages on Facebook. And one of the pages that I follow advertised him because he does these walking tours in the geisha districts of Kyoto. And so I just researched him a little and was like, I think he might be the guy that we have to ask, because I don't know anyone else who's this much of an expert. There's fans, and then there's I've experienced all of this stuff. And he was the guy that's experienced everything. So I was like, it has to be him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was a good episode. A little controversial, apparently, but it was a good episode. And we did have one actual email, feedback email from a surprising person, the artistic director of Kaminari Taiko, who is the taiko group that comes and plays at the Japan Fest every year in New Orleans. She actually reached out to me, so I'll just going to read the email. Howdy, I am the artistic director of Kaminari Taiko in Houston. I've been listening to the Krewe of Japan podcast since y'all tagged us on an Instagram post with the Takumi Kato episode, and I just wanted to say hi and tell you how much I enjoy the show. I'm really impressed with how well made the show is and the wide variety of topics that you cover. I was also interested to see how active Japan Society of New Orleans is. It's very cool. Kaminari Taiko has been traveling to New Orleans to perform at Japan Fest for the last 15 years or so, but we've mostly interacted with Bobby of Japan Club, which I guess is a different group from Japan Society. Yes, it is. Love the podcast. Y'all seem cool. If you're at Japan Fest tomorrow and want to say hi, we usually have some folks hanging out next to us on the front of the steps. Looking forward to the future episodes, and I still have about 80 past ones to listen to. Have a good weekend. Best, Natalie. So, nice. Natalie. Yeah, and actually I did go up and introduce myself and say hi.
I was going to ask.
Yeah. So very, very nice. And it was great to meet people who listen in public.
Yeah, it is.
That's one thing about this. You don't know who your subscribers are or followers or whatever. I mean, you do. They follow a page or follow you on Twitter, but you don't know who's actually listening. And it's cool to meet people who listened. So yeah. I found that really surprising. I wasn't expecting that email. And she touched on something that I forgot to mention earlier with our marketing for the season and how we changed. I was talking to a friend of mine, Jay, who runs the Japan in Arabia Instagram account. And we were on Jet together in Fukushima, and we go back a long time. And he's been building up his community there. And he said, man, why don't you just tag a bunch of people who are kind of adjacent to whatever the topic of the week is on your Instagram posts? I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, just make sure you follow them and tag them. And I'm like, isn't that going to spam them? He's like, eh. So I did that for a few episodes, not everyone, but it did get some reshares and stuff. And this is one of them where I tagged a bunch of different Taiko groups, like other people who might be interested in hearing what Takumi had to say, but also Takumi's traveling around the country and he's met with a lot of these groups too. So, I thought that'd be kind of cool to do, and it worked out. So,
Yeah, no, that's
good.
pretty cool.
So if I tagged you on one of our posts and that's how you interacted with us or found out about us, I'm sorry, but also thank you for your listening.
This is a good moment to kind of look into the future of like, what is season 6 going to look like, guys? What we're doing?
Is there going to be more Nigel?
Dun dun dun.
Right. Well, I think my presence here today, after a pretty long absence, is a little bit of a hint at that. And I certainly am planning on it in all aspects of being behind the scenes, helping to get guests on, but also having truly hanging out with you two and making this podcast being one of the best things in my life. Like I said, that joy of putting something out in the world that you've thought of in your bedroom or something, and it becomes an actual idea where you bring people together and you put it out there and other people are listening to it, and then they come up to Doug at Japan Fest and they they recognize you and stuff. Like,
insane.
It's insane. And so absolutely I do intend to be here for season 6 to help y'all plan it, and I'm sure that planning starts right after this episode. So
it does.
As soon as we hang up, we're probably gonna have another one more thing
text message thread.
Yeah,
the classics.
I do want to call out that this episode is officially, now we've had bonus episodes here and there, which in Simplecast's mind don't count as an episode. This episode will officially be episode 99. So the kickoff for season 6 will be 100. So whatever we lead off with, we gotta figure something out.
How we're gonna do this. Pressure.
I know, right? With no pressure at all, but all the pressure.
Okay.
I had a couple ideas, which we will talk about after this. But as I mentioned, we had a lot of people reaching out to us with ideas for a potential guests, like themselves, pitching themselves as guests that we're going to entertain and look into and try to when we're planning out. But also we have other ideas that each of us individually, but also as a group have come together with as well. So a lot of things to come.
Yeah.
Jen and Nigel, I think I might have mentioned this to you briefly, but there was one person I reached out to as like kind of a Hail Mary, and it may have paid off.
Yeah.
So that we'll see where that goes. Jen, I think you get notifications on Instagram, right?
I do, yes. I'm not on the Instagram often, and I'm not active like you are on the page, but I see everything. So yeah, I mean, I was active this week.
Okay,
because I messaged Chris from TDR Explorer to wish him well.
Yes, yeah, Chris, if you're listening, hope you are doing well.
Yes,
but yeah, so there was a message that came back in response to something I sent out that I am very hopeful could work out, which would be really interesting. I don't know if it'll be our first episode, but it'll be usually the first interviews we have are the ones we kind of lead the season off with, just because those are in the bank. But yeah, in terms of when it will air, when will this episode air is really the question we should be asking.
Yeah. Hey, you got a December 31st deadline, basically.
Yeah. So I think season 6 probably will be a similar release date sometime in March or April of next year.
Really? I kind of want it to be February. Only because Doug is going to kill me. Listeners, if I'm not in season 6, you know who did it. Anyway. Listen before you have a panic attack. I'm saying
they need to be this needs to be a video podcast just so they can see my face right now.
Listen. Okay, so
right.
If we think about the timing, Mardi Gras, which is a New Orleans holiday, is in March this year.
Yes.
So I'm thinking we should start at least the release a little bit before Mardi Gras.
Okay.
Instead of after Mardi Gras, because after would be a little too late.
Okay.
I think we need to keep the tradition of a February-March release. I don't want to do an April release. That is horrendous. That sounds awful.
April's too late. Okay.
It's too late. I hate it.
I think it comes down to, planning how many people we can get on and episodes mapped out. So
I think we need to just see how many interviews we can get done. And then the biggest thing is getting the interviews done and then getting the editing done. Like if I can get like the thing is
Nigel, chop back to work.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I am happy to get back into doing.
We've talked offline a little bit about how we could possibly help each other out here.
I mean, that might be fun for listeners to be like, okay, who edited this episode? Let's find out. Let's pick the little nuances.
I think that was the one thing. We had like seasons 1 and 2 was all Nigel, like editing. Season 3, 4, and 5, all me. And I think to eliminate burnout, I think having two people who know, because I didn't know how to edit in season 1 and 2. So I didn't know. And it was something I kind of learned just through natural YouTube.
Yeah.
It sounds like an organic version of YouTube.
Natural YouTube. What? I've already forgotten. What's your noodle
adjacent?
Noodle adjacent and natural YouTube. There you go.
So yeah, we've it just depends, but I think we can work something out, and that's the plan. This is all part of the planning process, and I think we're going to be having some meetings to talk through stuff and planning.
Because if we don't have meetings to talk about these things, you get reactions like Doug freaking out when I say February.
I still am freaking out when you say February, but end of February sounds much better than like Groundhog Day February.
There you go. See?
Right.
Well, one thing I'll add too, I think it's kind of a just for the future, it's a changing landscape in the content creation world these days, and especially with the growth of AI, and so I'm curious to see, how we can, work that into the mix of editing.
Coming from the world of academia, I say we should not mess with that.
I know.
Just saying.
The topic of AI is very...
it's very divisive,
but that would make this episode the most controversial episode of
However, AI has manifested itself in so many different ways that there's these little practical things that also pop up that you're like, wow, I didn't realize how much AI could improve this process. Like, for example, photo editing, which is something that I've still been doing, behind the scenes, has taken dramatic leaps and bounds, and not just in Photoshop and making, adding things into your photos that were not there, but even simple things like correcting lighting and the smaller things that you don't maybe notice as much. And I'm curious to see, how that has manifested itself in things like audio editing. And
there are things that I know Zencastr, if you use their editing tools, they have some things to help eliminate through natural, like just not natural YouTube.
Natural YouTube.
You say natural.
There we go.
But they help eliminate some of those like things and things like that.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of things that help clean up and take what may as a total take like an hour of work and eliminate that, because it's things that you're going to do regardless, like eliminating spaces or gaps or stutters or things like that. There are things that I've read about. I haven't actually used because I'm much more of a manual person. I'm too scared of change. That I have not embraced the future, if that will embrace me.
Okay, so we have noodle adjacent, we have natural YouTube, and manual person. I don't think, I'm not...
Listeners, I think Doug is broken, and...
I blame February deadlines.
Don't worry, we'll get an AI Doug for season 6 to
replace it. Oh, that's the sound they make. Bleep bloop. But yeah, so stay tuned. We'll definitely be keeping you posted whether or not Jennifer's still alive, and if I can make this deadline of February.
Replace her with the AI as well.
Nigel's the last to survive.
How the
first
tables
and the last
turned.
of us.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, well, last but not least, we could not do any of this without Japan Society of New Orleans,
of which Jennifer is the vice president now.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm a bigwig. I didn't know that. At our annual meeting, everyone was like, "Oh, you're like the person in charge." I'm like, "Well, that's the president, but like I'm just here."
Well, one thing I will say is the Japan Society for sure has been awesome. Has been really the vehicle that's been able to really drive the podcast, and I truly believe connect us to so many people.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the really cool things I'll say, just as a plug for Japan Society, but also a shout out to season 5, is that it was really cool to see this season kind of the shouting out the events coming up for Japan Society. super, super cool way to plug in the roots of the podcast and to kind of contribute and highlight kind of what brought us all together. And again, highlight things in the local community. So super awesome, really cool idea, whichever one of you had it.
Yeah, that was Doug.
Doug is raising his hand. Yeah.
You can't hear my wave, but I wave.
Yeah, super cool.
But speaking of upcoming events, if you didn't hear it when the episode released, because I'm sure I'm going to put that in there at some point after I edit the rest of this out. Not out. Edit this episode up, in, out, whatever. As soon as I edit the rest of this episode.
We're on the verge of a fourth Dougism right now, but I don't know what it is yet.
At this point, I'm not trying. It's just happening. But... So yeah, our upcoming events. I know, Jen, our book club has something coming up in the future, right? I don't know exactly. I can't remember the date because I was eating when you were telling us this at the annual meeting. So I don't remember.
Oh my God, guys, I'm crying. The next book club is on February 2nd, 2025. And the book is, oh God.
You were eating too, huh? Okay.
No, my sinus infection is blocking my brain from functioning. It's like if cats disappeared from this world.
That's right. I remember it was cats.
And it'll be on Zoom, so you'll have to register with the Zoom link to attend. But yeah, it should be a good read. It's gotten a lot of attention over the years. So yeah.
There you go, Nigel. One way to get back involved with Japan Society, another way.
I know. I think I was actually at the very first Quiet on Book Club meeting. And,
I think you were.
Yeah, I used to regularly attend those. So when they were back in person, in the pre-COVID world, those were awesome meetings. I really loved that.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have our monthly happy hours at NOLA Brewery that take place usually on the third Wednesday. Check the calendar. There are some times when we have to shift things around, but definitely keep that in mind. And then in February, there's an event with the World War II Museum where they're going to have a short film played about Japanese American soldiers and have a special guest speaker. We're partnering with the World War II Museum again, a corporate sponsor of Japan Society New Orleans. So yeah, check that out. And then there's going to be more stuff. I mean, there's movie nights that we're working through, and I know there's some other conversations about dinner events, culture lectures, so many different things in the works. So if you aren't a member, you can go to japansocietyofneworleans.com or just Google it, and then the website will be there.
.org. What the heck is wrong with you?
I'm going to leave that in there. I don't care. .org.
Doug, you're done for the day. I am clocking you out.
All right. So last shout out. If you want to become a member, check out the website, japansocietyofneworleans.org, and sign up. It's singles only. No, I'm just kidding. Singles 25. Singles are 25. Couple or family registrations are 40, and students are 10, and high school students and below are 0. They're free. So if you are interested, if you're younger and you're interested in joining, check out our cheaper discounted rates for you, or no rate at all. And get involved, because we would love to host more events for our younger demographic of membership, because we do have some high school and college students that I think it would be great to put out events for those that are interested in doing that as well. Again, working on trying to get more events out there for the entire demographic of folks interested in Japan. So reach out, and if you have any ideas for events, let us know. I mean, we're involved in the board and everything, so we could take those to the people that matter, which is Jennifer. So, I mean, yeah, just email her. Put more on her plate, less on mine.
Nice.
Great.
And with that,
there you go.
I think that's the end of the episode. No more and ones. No more one more things.
Season 5 at a close.
In the books.
Well, that's awesome. But no, it's a good conversation. Thanks for allowing me back into the space. And
why would we not allow you back?
We're just allowing you back so we can kick you back out.
I'll go slither back to my natural YouTube watching and just exist there. So
just watch out for the bees.
Yeah.
I just can't wait for our dynamic in season 6. I miss our 3-person dynamic. It's great.
And I hope one episode we can try to get that's the thing, time zones and everything is a lot harder, but getting Maddie on here too and get all 4 of us back for an episode, I think that'd be really fun. At least for episode 100 for a piece of it.
4 darumas will be assembled and reunited from our logo.
Make a giant mecha daruma. We should make a graphic of a mecha daruma. All right, Maddie, if you're listening.
Maddie, you're on it. You gotta make us
something. Let's do this.
There we
Let's make it
go.
happen.
No, it's awesome. Super, super proud of everything y'all have done through the past season. And
Yep, we kept it afloat while you were gone, Captain.
kept it afloat. And I am looking forward to being a part of season 6 and helping out where I can. So
All right, well, glad to have you back, man.
here we go. Let's
do this.
Do it.
See you all in season 6. Bye.
And that's it for this week's episode, and for season 5 as a whole. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Krewe of Japan podcast this season. As we close out season 5 with this recap episode, you already know that we are hard at work on season 6. I'm particularly super excited to be back with the crew, working on amazing audio journey episodes each week for you in your feed. A couple things to keep in mind as the holidays come up and Japan Society events come up. The book club meeting that was scheduled for February is being pushed to March. So keep an eye on your timeline for the latest updates if you're in the New Orleans area on when that is actually happening. If you haven't fully caught up on our podcast episodes, you'll have the chance to do so while you wait for season 6 to start. Ready for more Krewe of Japan podcast? Or maybe you have a topic idea for season 6. Share with us on Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever else you're on social media. You can find us by searching Krewe of Japan podcast. That's KREWEOFJAPAN podcast. While you're there, give us a comment, a follow, a like, or just let us know how you're enjoying the podcast. Or perhaps you prefer to send your feedback in a more private setting. You can send us an email at Krewe of Japan podcast. Again, that's KREWEOFJAPAN podcast at gmail.com. We'd really love to hear from you. While you're at it, if you're willing to give the podcast a rating, we're always open to it, and you can do so on your podcast listening platform of choice. Every one of those 5-star ratings and reviews helps others interested in finding Japan-related content, and specifically our podcast. So feel free to stop by, give us a review. Any and all support is incredibly appreciated. But that's all for today, and actually for this season. So thanks for listening. As always, it's been a pleasure to guide you through Japan, its culture, and we look forward to doing it again in season 6. Until next time.
Looking to start your own podcast and don't know what platform to use? Tell me about it. When we started the Krewe of Japan podcast, we tried a bunch of the big name recording platforms, but always came back to the one we're still currently using to this day, Zencastr. Zencastr is now the all-in-one solution making podcasting easy. In addition to its high audio and video quality for podcast production, Zencastr provides a full suite of production tools to record, produce, and publish studio quality content from the comfort of your home. Just log in through your browser and start recording. It's that simple. For us, we simply send out links to our guests and they join the lobby. But before you know it, it's all done and you have your studio quality audio and up to 4K video right there ready for you, right when you finish. The best part is having their multi-layered backups to ensure that your recordings are in the highest quality, regardless of anyone's internet connection stability. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcasts in one place and distribute to all the major destinations. It's really that easy. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code Krewe of Japan, KREWEOFJAPAN, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's your time to share your story.